I'm creating this video to help you review your factoring. This is the first step in getting the extra credit added to your quiz. You need to watch this video and take notes. Email me submit the picture of your notes to Google Classroom, and then complete the Delta Math assignment. When both things are done, then I will add up to 10 points to your quiz. Okay, so let's talk about factoring. The first type that we're going to review is greatest common factor. So if I look at this first example, 3x plus 12, I'm going to look for the largest number that I can divide into both of those. Okay, it's not 12 because I can't do 12 or 3 divided by 12, but it is 3. 3 is the largest number I can take out. So I'm going to write the greatest common factor of 3. Then I'm going to divide each term by 3. So 3x divided by 3 is x. 12 divided by 3 is 4. And this is my final factored answer. Okay, let's look at number 2. Number 2, I have negative 4x minus 28. So the first thing I need to do is look to see what the largest number I can divide into both of those. And the largest number I can divide into both of those is 4. But when I'm factoring, I always want my first term to be positive. So if it's negative, I'm going to take out a negative 4 instead. So negative 4x divided by negative 4 is x. Negative 28 divided by negative 4 is 7. Our next example is 5x squared plus 20x. Now in this example, I can take out a greatest common factor of 5, but I also have a variable of x that I can take out. I can only take out one x because this second term 20x only has one x to give. It can't take out more than it has. So when I go through here, 5x squared divided by 5, well the 5's go away. There was 2 x's and now there's 1 left. Then 20 divided by 5 is 4 and the x's cancel. Next example we're going to do is 6x squared plus 10x. Okay, so looking for numbers. Well, the largest number I can take out of both of those would be 2. Whoops, didn't mean to write my parentheses yet. But I can also take out an x, so I'm going to take out an x. So 6x squared divided by 2x. Well, 6 divided by 2 is 3. There's 2 x's, I take away 1, so I have x plus 10 divided by 2 is 5, and the x's cancel. The last greatest common factor problem I'm going to show you is x squared plus 14x. Well, this one doesn't have a number that I can take out of both of them, but I can take out an x, so I'm going to take out an x, and I'm left with x plus 14. And that's it. It's factored. There's no more. You don't write x plus 0. All right, the next one we're going to look at is binomials. Okay, and we're going to do the sum and difference of squares. Okay, so here's the pattern. If I have a squared minus b squared, this is going to factor to a plus b, a minus b. But if I have a squared plus b squared, this is going to factor to a plus bi times a minus bi. Notice that the a's come first and the b's come second. Notice they're both plus and minus. The only difference is this one started with a minus, so there's no I, and this one started with a plus, so we add the I. Let's take a look at some of these examples and see if we can figure this out. So on the first one, we want to factor x squared minus 9. There's a binomial. There's no number that we can factor out of this, so I'm going to use my pattern. Since I can take the square root of both of these, I'm going to go straight to my 2 parentheses. The square root of x squared is x. The square root of 9 is 3. 1 is a plus and 1 is a minus. Okay, we're done. Now let's compare this, for example's sake, to what if we had to factor x squared plus 9? Okay, well, it's the same type of problem. It's a binomial, and I can take the square root of everything. So I'm going to go straight to my 2 parentheses. The square root of x squared is x. The square root of 9 is 3. 1's a plus, 1's a minus. But since what I'm factoring is a plus, then I'm going to add an I to it. All right, let's try this again. let's try 4x squared minus 36. Well, it's a binomial. There's a minus. Well, it doesn't matter what's a minus or plus sign. And I can take the square root of both of them. So I'm going to go straight to my two parentheses. The square root of 4x squared is 2x. Square root of 36 is 6. One's plus, one's minus. But I look, there's a minus sign, so no I. Let's try another one. What about this one? 2x squared plus 50. Oh, well, it's binomial. Doesn't matter if it's plus or minus, but I can't take the square root of anything. So I have to look to see if there's a greatest common factor. And there is. There's a 2. So I'm going to divide everything by 2, and that leaves me with x squared plus 25. Now I'm going to factor what is in the parentheses. That's what I'm focusing on factoring right now. Okay, in the parentheses, I have a binomial, and I can take the square root of both. So I'm going to go straight to my two parentheses. I have an x and an x. Square root of 25 is 5. One's plus, one's minus. They are always opposite signs. But since my problem started with a plus that I was factoring, I have to add the I. Okay, let's look at this one. Number 5, we're going to do 3x squared minus 27. It's a binomial. Doesn't matter if it's plus or minus. I can't take the square root of any of that, so I'm going to look to see if there's a greatest common factor. There is. It's 3. 3x squared divided by 3 is x squared. 27 divided by 3 is 9. Now looking in just the parentheses, that's a binomial, and I can take the square root of everything. So I'm going to go straight to my two parentheses. I have an x and an x. Square root of 9 is 3 and 3. One's plus, one's minus, because they're always opposite signs. But when I look here, this is a minus, so there is no I. Let's do one more. Number 6, we're going to have negative 5x squared minus, hold on, I just forgot one. Oh, 45. Well, no, well, just kidding. We'll do 20. That would be better. Okay. So on this one, it's a binomial. Doesn't matter if it's plus or minus. Two things though. One I notice is that this one starts with a negative. At any time it starts with a negative, I know at a minimum I have to take out a -1. But looking at this, I can see that I can take out more than a -1. I can take out a -5. And when I do that, negative 5x squared divided by -5 is x squared. Negative 20 divided by -5 is 4. In my parentheses, and when I say in my parentheses, I'm looking at this part. Now I'm trying to factor just this part. My greatest common factor gets a free ride. Because it's a binomial and I can take the square root of everything, I'm going to go straight to my two parentheses. The square root of x squared is x. Square root of 4 is 2. One's a plus, one's a minus, because they're always opposite signs. But because what I'm factoring had a plus, then I am going to add the I. All right, the last pattern is a trinomial with a leading coefficient of 1. Okay, so let's look at this first one. I want to factor x squared plus 10x plus 21. Now what I'm looking for is two numbers that multiply to 21 and add to 10. So my options are 1 and 21 and 3 and 7. I know that they have to be the same sign because it multiplies to a positive, and I know they have to both be positive because it adds to a positive. Well, 1 and 21 add to 22, so my option has to be 3 and 7. So this is going to factor to x plus 3, x plus 7. Let's try this again. Number 2, I'm going to factor x squared minus 10x plus 16. Okay, so I need two numbers that multiply to 16 and add to -10. Since they're multiplying to a positive, I know they have to be the same sign. And because they add to a negative, they both have to be negative. So I can have -1 and -16, -2 and -8, or -4 and -4. Well, the ones that add to -10 would be these two. So this factors to x minus 2, x minus 8. Number 3, we want to factor x squared minus 2x minus 15. Okay, so it's a trinomial with a leading coefficient of 1. I'm going to go straight to my 2 parentheses. I want two numbers that multiply to negative 15 and add to negative 2. Since they multiply to a negative, one has to be positive and one has to be negative. Since they add to a negative, that means the bigger one has to be negative. So I can have negative 15 and 1 or negative 5 and 3. Well, the one that adds to negative 2 would be this one, so it's going to be x minus 5, x minus 3. Last example of this type. We're going to do x squared plus 4x minus 32. So I'm going to go straight to my 2 parentheses. I have an x and an x. The two numbers that multiply to negative 32 and add to 4 are going to be positive 8 and negative 4. Okay, real quick, I want to do a little bit of solve by factoring and then you're done. Okay, when you solve by factoring, you're going to set equal to 0, you're going to factor, and then you're going to solve. Okay, notice all of these were factoring and we stopped at the parentheses, right? All of these ended in parentheses. We didn't go any further. All right, let's try a couple of these. Number 1, we have x squared minus 16 equals 0. Well, it is set equal to 0, so that step is done. Now we need to factor it. It's a binomial. It doesn't matter if it's a plus or minus sign. I can take the square root of both, so I can go straight to my 2 parentheses. The square root of x squared is x. The square root of 16 is 4. One's plus, one's minus, because they're always opposite signs. But since I started with a minus, there is no I. The last step is to write your equations and solve. So either x plus 4 equals 0 or x minus 4 equals 0. So on this one we subtract 4, so we get x equals negative 4. Here we add 4, so we get x equals positive 4. And those are my 2 answers. On the second one, now this part, a lot of people do in your head, but I'm writing it out right now so we understand what we need to do. The next one we're going to do is 4x squared equals negative 9. Step 1, set it equal to 0, so I'm going to add 9 to both sides. Step 2, factor. It's a binomial. Doesn't matter if it's plus or minus. I can take the square root of everything, so I'm going to go straight to my 2 parentheses. The square root of 4x squared is 2x. The square root of 9 is 3. One is plus, one is minus, because they are always opposite signs. Because I have a plus, I have to add my I. So this one is 2x plus 3i equals 0. So to solve, I'm going to subtract 3i from both sides. So I get 2x equals negative 3i. I divide by 2, so x equals negative 3i over 2. This one is going to give me x equals positive 3i over 2. Okay, 2 more examples and then we're done. Let's solve this one. X squared plus 2x equals 24. When you factor, first step, set it equal to 0. And when you set it equal to 0, it has to be x squared, x, and then the number. So I'm going to have x squared plus 2x minus 24 equals 0. It's a trinomial. I'm going to go straight to my 2 parentheses, so I have an x and an x. The two numbers that multiply to negative 6 and multiply to negative 24 and add to 2, well, would be positive 6 and negative 4. So when I solve, x plus 6 equals 0 and x minus 4 equals 0. So x equals negative 6 and positive 4. Last example. Number 4, x squared equals negative 12x. First step, set it equal to 0. So x squared plus 12x equals 0. It's a binomial, doesn't matter if it's plus or minus, but I cannot take the square root. If I cannot take the square root of both of them, I cannot use my difference or sum of square pattern, which means I need to look for the greatest common factor. There is no number greatest common factor, it's just a variable of an x. So I take out an x and I'm left with x plus 12. So now to solve either, either x equals 0 or x plus 12 equals 0. So I get x equals 0 or negative 12. Now that you have your notes, take a picture of them and submit it to Google Classroom.